Gentlemen, let me ask you something right now. How often do we think we're doing enough? Yet women are quietly longing for something we consistently ignore. I'm not talking about grand gestures or flashy displays. I'm talking about the quiet rules, the unspoken truths, the little things that make the difference between connection and confusion. Awareness of emotional cues is one of those things that separates the men who merely exist in relationships from the men who create connections that are electric, magnetic, and unforgettable. Most men believe that attraction is built through words, through actions that are loud and visible, but the truth is the heart of connection lies in the subtle, almost invisible ways a woman communicates her feelings, her needs, and her desires. These are the things she rarely says out loud: the glances, the shifts in tone, the tiny hesitations, the micro-expressions that flicker across her face when she is truly engaged or when she is quietly disappointed. To the untrained eye, they might seem insignificant, but to a man who pays attention, they are the roadmap to understanding her on a level few men ever reach. Being aware of these cues is not just a skill, it's a mindset, a commitment to seeing beyond the surface, to understanding the language of her heart without needing her to spell it out. It requires patience, focus, and an emotional intelligence that most men are never taught to cultivate. When a woman subtly leans in, when her smile carries a softness that she doesn't share with anyone else, or when her words are clipped but her eyes linger, she's giving you information about how safe she feels, how desired she feels, how understood she feels. Many men, however, are distracted, wrapped up in their own thoughts, anxieties, or assumptions, and they miss these signals entirely. They hear the words, but not the emotion behind them, and that is where connection breaks down. Awareness of emotional cues means tuning in, truly tuning in, and not just listening, but observing, feeling, and interpreting what she is expressing through the subtle language of her body and mind. It's the difference between responding to a conversation and connecting on a level that resonates deeply. When you recognize her unspoken needs, you have the power to respond in ways that validate her experience, that make her feel seen, cherished, and secure. It's not about manipulation or guessing games. It's about empathy, attentiveness, and the willingness to engage with her world as she experiences it, not as you assume it should be. This awareness is also a reflection of self-mastery. A man who is attuned to emotional cues is not reactive. He is calm, present, and deliberate in his interactions. He doesn't need constant validation or reassurance because he understands the rhythm of communication and the subtle signals that guide behavior and emotion. He notices the shift in energy when she is uncomfortable, the quick glance that betrays her thoughts, the tension in her shoulders when something is wrong. He learns to adjust his approach, to create safety, to open space for honesty without forcing it, to respond in a way that makes her feel truly understood. In a world where so many men ignore these details, missing them entirely or dismissing them as inconsequential, this skill becomes rare and incredibly powerful. Women crave it because it is validation at its deepest level. They don't just want to be heard, they want to be felt. To know that the person they are with can see them beyond their words, can perceive their emotional landscape, and can act in alignment with it. The man who can pick up on these cues builds trust instantly because she knows he is present, that he is engaged, that he values her experience. Over time, this awareness cultivates intimacy, a closeness that is not just physical but emotional, psychological, and spiritual. It changes the entire dynamic of the relationship because it transforms interactions from mechanical exchanges into meaningful connections. Every glance, every gesture, every inflection carries meaning, and a man who understands this becomes magnetic not because he chases, but because he responds authentically, intuitively, and consistently to what she is communicating. Awareness of emotional cues also fosters patience and reduces conflict. Many arguments between couples stem not from what is said, but from what is unspoken and misinterpreted. When a man is aware of her emotional cues, he can navigate these moments with sensitivity, diffusing tension before it escalates, and ensuring that misunderstandings never spiral into resentment. He recognizes when she needs space, when she needs reassurance, and when she simply wants to be heard without advice or solutions. He understands that her silence is not necessarily resistance, that her hesitation is not rejection, and that her subtle signals are guidance, not criticism. The beauty of this skill lies in its subtlety. You don't need grand gestures or dramatic interventions to make a woman feel profoundly understood. Often it's the quiet acknowledgement, the slight shift in posture, the softening of your tone, or the deliberate act of noticing that makes all the difference. Emotional awareness is not performative. It is a deep, lived attentiveness that speaks louder than words ever could. It requires a commitment to seeing beyond your own perspective, to recognizing that she experiences the world differently, and to honoring that reality in every interaction. When a man masters this, he doesn't just communicate with her, he resonates with her. And at resonance, he becomes unforgettable. Consistency and reliability are two qualities that many men underestimate, yet they are the foundation of how a woman measures safety, trust, and long-term emotional security. Most men think attraction is built on charm, appearance, or confidence alone, but what truly makes a woman stay, what makes her invest, what makes her believe in a man, is his consistency. It's not what you do once, it's not the promise you make, it's who you are every day, especially when nobody is watching. Women pay attention to patterns, how you speak, how you show up, how you handle stress, how you treat people, and how you treat yourself. To her, consistency isn't boring. Consistency is proof. It's proof that your words mean something, that your intentions align with your actions, and that you are a man of substance rather than a man of moments. Reliability, on the other hand, is the quiet backbone of confidence in a relationship. It's not loud or flashy. It doesn't need validation or applause. Reliability is demonstrated through behavior that remains stable, even when life becomes chaotic. It means showing up when you said you would. It means following through on commitments. It means being emotionally steady even when you feel challenged or frustrated. To a woman, reliability isn't about perfection. It's about predictability in the best sense of the word. The kind of predictability that allows her to exhale, to relax, to trust. When a man is reliable, she doesn't have to guess what mood he will be in, whether his actions will match his words, or whether she can count on him when it matters. Most men underestimate how deeply women feel inconsistency. A man may forget a promise, change his tone, shift his energy, or become distant without realizing how profoundly it affects her sense of safety. Women notice these shifts instantly. They don't need explanations or long conversations to sense instability. They feel it. Inconsistency shakes a woman's trust because it disrupts her ability to predict emotional outcomes. When your behavior becomes unpredictable, she becomes cautious. When you say one thing and do another, she becomes guarded. When you start strong but fade over time, she questions whether you were genuine from the beginning. A woman's emotional system is wired to seek stability, and inconsistency feels like danger, whether you intend it or not. But when you are consistent, something remarkable happens. A woman begins to open up naturally. Her guard lowers. Her communication becomes softer, more honest, more vulnerable. She begins to trust not because you asked her to, but because your behavior earned it. A consistent man eliminates fear. He eliminates doubt. He eliminates insecurity because she knows what to expect from him. She knows his character doesn't shift with his mood. She knows his values remain firm even when life tests him. She knows his presence isn't conditional on convenience, excitement, or temporary emotion. She knows he is anchored, steady, and reliable in ways that set him apart from the majority of men she has known. Consistency is a reflection of discipline, and women can sense discipline in a man long before he speaks about it. It shows in how he handles responsibilities, and how he approaches goals, and how he reacts under pressure, and in how he takes accountability for his mistakes. A disciplined man doesn't need to prove anything because his actions do the proving for him. Women are not impressed by temporary effort. They are moved by long-term character. They want a man who is consistent, not just in affection, but in values. Not just in words, but in integrity. Not just in the beginning, but throughout the relationship. Even when the feelings fluctuate, even when challenges rise. Reliability is also emotional. It means your energy doesn't shift dramatically. It means you don't disappear when things get difficult. It means you don't punish her with silence or withdraw affection as a form of control. It means you treat her with respect even in disagreement. Emotional reliability is one of the greatest comforts a woman can experience. It allows her to express herself without fear, to disagree without tension, and to lean on you without uncertainty. Emotional reliability is not about never getting upset. It's about not allowing your emotions to destabilize your behavior. Women admire a man who can feel deeply yet still lead with calmness, presence, and maturity. Most men don't realize that their inconsistency often comes from their own internal instability, lack of clarity, lack of purpose, lack of discipline, or lack of emotional control. When a man is inconsistent in his own life, he cannot be consistent in a relationship. Women sense this immediately. A man without direction feels unstable. A man who breaks his promises to himself will eventually break them to others. A man who is unreliable with his own goals will struggle to be reliable with hers. This is why consistency begins within. When you are committed to yourself, when you follow through on your own responsibilities, when you live with structure and discipline, you automatically project reliability in every area of life. Women notice this long before you ever speak about your ambitions or dreams. Consistency is attractive because it communicates power, not power over someone, but power over yourself. It shows that you are not swayed by impulses, moods, or external circumstances. It shows that you can be trusted not because you say you can, but because your actions prove it repeatedly. It shows that you understand that real strength is not loud, it is steady. Real leadership is forceful, it is dependable. Real masculinity is not intensity, it is consistency. When a woman sees a man who is consistent, she feels safe enough to be her true self. She doesn't need to perform, impress, or guard her emotions. She doesn't need to question his motives or analyze his behavior. She doesn't need to fear abandonment or inconsistency. Instead, she feels grounded, cherished, and secure. And when a woman feels secure, everything else flows naturally. Affection, respect, admiration, loyalty, and emotional intimacy. A consistent man doesn't have to ask for these things. They come to him because his presence calls them forth. Respect is the foundation upon which every meaningful connection is built. Yet it is one of the most misunderstood qualities among men today. Many men believe respect is simply about being polite, using the right words, or avoiding conflict. But real respect goes far deeper. It is reflected in how you treat her, how you treat yourself, and how you treat the world around you. Respect is not an act. It is a presence, a code of conduct, a quiet strength that shows itself through consistency, values, and character. And what most men fail to understand is that a woman can feel instantly, without explanation, whether a man lives with respect or merely performs it. She senses it through his tone, his decisions, his maturity, and his self-control. Respect is not something you demand. It is something you demonstrate every day in the way you move, react, and lead. To a woman, respect begins with how you respect yourself. A man who respects himself carries a certain posture, a certain quiet confidence, a certain mental discipline that cannot be faked. He values his time, his goals, his emotional well-being. He sets standards, not out of arrogance, but out of self-worth. He doesn't allow himself to be treated poorly, and he doesn't treat others poor. In return, this internal respect reflects outwardly in ways a woman immediately notices. When a man respects himself, his boundaries are strong, his communication is clear, and his energy is stable. He doesn't beg for attention, he doesn't chase validation, and he doesn't crumble under emotional pressure. This self-respect allows him to lead with calm authority, and women feel safe with men who carry this type of grounded presence. Respect also shows through how a man treats her emotionally. It's in the way he listens without dismissing, the way he speaks without belittling, the way he disagrees without demeaning. Many men think respect is shown only when you're in a good mood, but a woman measures your respect most clearly during the difficult moments, when you're frustrated, when you're tired, when you're challenged. Your reaction in those moments tells her everything she needs to know about the depth of your character. A man who remains composed, who doesn't resort to insults or silence as a weapon, who doesn't mock her feelings or minimize her perspective, shows a level of respect that instantly elevates him in her eyes. Respect is not proven in harmony, it is proven in tension. Respect is also reflected in how a man treats the world around him. A woman pays attention to how you speak to strangers, how you handle mistakes, how you talk about people who are not in the room. She notices whether you show kindness when it's inconvenient, whether you honor commitments even when no one is applauding, whether you carry discipline in your habits and integrity in your decisions. Women observe these things not because they are judging you, but because they want to understand the kind of man you truly are. She knows that how you treat others will eventually reflect how you treat her. If you're dismissive toward people who can't offer you anything, she knows that one day you'll be dismissive toward her when she's vulnerable. If you break promises to yourself, she knows eventually you will break them with her. Respect is a pattern, and patterns don't lie. One of the most powerful forms of respect is respecting her individuality. Many men unknowingly try to mold women into the version they find convenient or comfortable, pushing their expectations, controlling her decisions, or minimizing her ambitions. But a man who respects a woman gives her the space to be fully herself. He encourages her growth instead of fearing it. He supports her dreams instead of competing with them. He values her voice not because it echoes his own, but because it offers a perspective he cannot have. Respect means acknowledging that she is not an accessory to your life, but a partner with her own identity, her own needs, her own journey. When a man respects a woman's individuality, she flourishes, her spirit opens, and her emotional connection deepens because she feels honored instead of contained. Respect is also reflected in accountability, a man who can look at his mistakes without defensiveness, who can apologize without pride, who can correct himself without resentment, demonstrates a maturity that is rare and deeply attractive. Accountability is one of the highest forms of respect because it shows that you value the relationship more than your ego. When a man takes responsibility for his words and actions, he builds trust. A woman feels emotionally safe with a man who does not deflect, deny, or blame when things go wrong. She knows she can bring concerns to him without fear of chaos. She knows disagreements will lead to solutions rather than emotional warfare. Accountability turns conflict into growth instead of destruction. Most importantly, respect is something you live daily, not something you turn on and off. It shows in the way you keep promises, the way you maintain boundaries, the way you show appreciation without expecting anything in return. It is in the way you speak to her when you're angry, in the way you honor her trust, in the way you protect her emotions instead of exploiting them. Respect is not just a behavior, it is a reflection of who you are. And when a woman senses that respect is part of your identity, not just your performance, she feels a deep and lasting sense of emotional security. A woman wants a man she can trust not because he tells her she can, but because his actions leave no room for doubt. She wants a man whose respect is not conditional on convenience, attraction, or momentary emotion, but consistent across all situations. She wants a man who speaks with intention, listens with depth, and treats her with consideration even when it is difficult. To her, respect is love in its purest form because it protects, supports, and honors her without needing to control or diminish her. Affection and reassurance are two things many men underestimate, yet they are two things women quietly long for, often without ever saying it outright. Most men think affection is about grand romantic gestures or dramatic moments, but the truth is far simpler. Affection is the everyday energy you bring into the connection. Your warmth, your presence, your tone, your willingness to let her see that you care without acting like it costs you strength. And the irony is this: when a man tries too hard to appear tough or emotionally distant, he doesn't look powerful, he looks closed off. Women don't want a man who is cold, they want a man who is warm without being weak, gentle without losing his edge, expressive without losing his stability. Affection isn't about being soft, it's about being secure enough to show you feel something. Reassurance works the same way. Women don't need constant praise, and they don't want a man who smothers them with compliments. They want a man who knows how to communicate safety. That safety comes from your presence, your words, your consistency, and your willingness to remind her, through small, meaningful actions, that she matters. When you reassure a woman, you're not feeding insecurity. You're strengthening emotional trust. You're showing her that you are not unpredictable, that you are not indifferent, that you are not here one day and gone the next. Reassurance isn't weakness, it's emotional leadership. It's the ability to bring stability into her world when her emotions feel overwhelming. Most women have been disappointed before. They've been lied to, ignored, used, judged, or taken for granted. They've had their emotions dismissed or weaponized against them. So when she meets a man who shows genuine affection, who is steady, who is present, who looks at her like she is worth being cared for, she feels something she rarely feels: peace. Affection is not about smothering her, it's about showing her that you see her, not just her beauty, but her heart, her presence, the little things she does that go unnoticed by the world. When you touch her gently, when you speak to her with warmth, when you look at her like she's the only one in the room, you activate a part of her that longs to feel protected and cherished. For a woman, reassurance is proof that your affection is real. You can be affectionate one day, but if you disappear the next, that affection becomes meaningless. Reassurance is what gives your affection credibility. It's what makes her believe that your warmth is not temporary, that your interest is not a momentary spark, that your attention is not something she has to fight for. When you reassure her with small, consistent gestures, her nervous system relaxes. She stops overthinking. She stops doubting. She stops comparing you to past disappointments. She starts trusting. And when a woman trusts, she becomes softer, more open, more feminine, more expressive, more loving, because she finally feels safe enough to let her barriers fall. Many men misunderstand affection as something that makes them vulnerable. They believe expressing care is a sign of neediness, but it is actually the opposite. Weak men hide their emotions. Strong men express them with control. Affection isn't about losing yourself. It's about choosing to connect. Reassurance isn't about chasing her. It's about grounding her. The men who fear being affectionate are usually the ones who have not yet mastered their emotions. They confuse emotional expression with emotional dependence. But the truth is that the strongest men are the ones who can stay present, stay warm, stay open without losing their sense of self. Affection and reassurance require emotional balance, not emotional fragility. Affection also builds attraction. A woman becomes more drawn to a man who knows how to hold her with the right balance of strength and softness. Women crave emotional closeness just as much as physical closeness, and affection is the bridge between the two. When you are affectionate, when you touch her with intention, when you speak to her with warmth, when you give her your presence without distraction, she feels read. Not superficially, but deeply. And when a woman feels desired emotionally, the physical connection becomes 10 times more powerful. Reassurance builds loyalty. When a woman feels emotionally safe, she attaches with her heart, not just her interest. She shows more love, more admiration, more effort. She becomes more patient, more supportive, more graceful. Emotional security transforms the entire dynamic of the relationship. A woman who feels cherished becomes a woman who cherishes back. A woman who feels valued becomes a woman who gives value. A woman who feels reassured becomes a woman who stands by you even in difficult moments. Most importantly, affection and reassurance are not demands. They are choices. They are habits. They are the small, daily actions that show her what kind of man you are. When you hold her close, when you tell her you appreciate her, when you listen instead of dismiss, when you respond instead of react, when you show up instead of pulling away, you create a love that feels mature, grounded, and unshakable. And every time you show affection or offer reassurance, you communicate one powerful message: I'm here and you matter. When a woman chooses you, she doesn't choose you because of what you have. She chooses you because of how she feels when she is around you. And the emotion that sits at the center of her attraction, her connection, and her loyalty is emotional certainty. This is the quiet, steady energy of a man who knows who he is, what he stands for, and how he moves through life. It's not arrogance, not ego, not dominance. It's alignment. It's the inner confidence that doesn't need to announce itself, doesn't need validation, doesn't need applause. It just exists. And when a woman feels it, she instinctively relaxes into it because it signals strength, stability, and direction. Most men misunderstand emotional certainty. They think it means they must be perfect, must never be confused, must never show emotion or vulnerability. But that is not certainty. That is fear disguised as toughness. Emotional certainty is the ability to stand firmly inside your own identity, even when life shakes you, even when emotions rise, even when things don't go as planned. It's the difference between reacting and responding, between chasing and choosing, between performing confidence and actually living it. A woman reads a man's emotional certainty not from his words, but from his behavior. She watches how he speaks when he is challenged. She watches how he moves when he is disappointed. She watches how he handles stress, pressure, temptation, conflict, and even success. Because all these moments reveal the truth of a man's emotional backbone. And when she sees inconsistency, unpredictability, and weakness disguised as bravado, she feels unsafe. But when she sees calm strength, grounded decision-making, and emotional leadership, she feels drawn in without even understanding why. Emotional certainty is magnetic because it creates a sense of direction in the relationship. It tells her, you are a man, W. Ho doesn't crumble under pressure, doesn't lose himself trying to please others, doesn't get thrown off track by emotion, impulse, or insecurity. Most men ignore this rule because they think women judge them on looks, money, status, or material things. But a woman's long-term attraction is anchored in the energy she experiences consistently from a man. When she feels emotionally safe, she becomes emotionally open. When she feels emotionally open, she becomes emotionally loyal. And when she becomes emotionally loyal, she becomes the best version of herself with you. The problem is that many men trade emotional certainty for emotional reactivity. They get jealous easily. They argue to win rather than to understand. They shut down when they feel insecure. Or they overexpress emotions in a way that places the burden on the woman to fix or reassure them. That reverses the polarity. Instead of being the anchor, the man becomes the storm. Instead of being the presence she can trust, he becomes the presence she must manage. And nothing kills attraction faster for a woman than feeling like she must emotionally parent the man she's with. Emotional certainty is built through discipline. Mental discipline, emotional discipline, and behavioral discipline. It's developed by being a man who trusts his own judgment, who doesn't overthink every small signal, who doesn't break down every word she says into a puzzle of insecurity. A man with emotional certainty doesn't panic when she pulls back. He doesn't explode when she disagrees. He doesn't question his value when she's upset. Instead, he listens, evaluates, understands, and responds in a way that shows maturity and clarity. Women are intuitive. They can feel when a man is anchored in himself versus when he is pretending to be. They can sense when a man's calm is real versus when it is forced. Emotional certainty isn't about ence or stoicism. It's about authenticity. It's the steadiness a man carries when he refuses to be ruled by fear. Fear of losing her, fear of not being enough, fear of being rejected, fear of confrontation, fear of being alone. When a man operates from fear, he becomes unpredictable. When he operates from certainty, he becomes dependable. This rule matters to women because it affects everything. Communication, intimacy, trust, security, attraction. When she knows you mean what you say and follow through on what you promise, she relaxes. When she sees you can control your emotions instead of being controlled by them, she respects you. When she sees you stay steady during conflict, she opens up instead of shutting down. When she senses your confidence comes from within instead of from approval or attention, she doesn't feel the need to test or question your intentions. Emotional certainty also means not allowing your emotions to be manipulated by external factors. Many men lose themselves trying to gain a woman's approval, attention, or affection. They become reactive, needy, or overly accommodating. That's not kindness, it's insecurity in disguise. Emotional certainty is maintaining your standards, your values, your boundaries, and your direction regardless of how much you care about someone. Subconsciously look for signs of this because emotional certainty signals that you can handle both the relationship and the pressures of life. When a woman sees that you are stable even when life is unstable, she trusts your leadership. When she sees that you stay grounded even when emotions rise, she feels safe to express hers. When she sees you know who you are, she feels confident choosing you because she knows you won. Lose yourself or lose her in the process. And this is why emotional certainty is not loud. It doesn't need to explain itself. It doesn't need to flex. It doesn't need to dominate. It doesn't need to shout. It simply stands calm and unshaken. And in that stillness, a woman feels something she rarely puts into words: safety, admiration, trust, and deeper attraction than you could ever create through image, money, or charm alone.